Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Tea with Taylor. Thank you for joining me today. Really happy to be bringing you episode 11, season two. Believe it or not, season two. This has been a great journey. When I last joined you, we ended the Negro Experience uh, series that I had created for Black History Month. And we're reaching the last week of Black History Month. We're in the last week. And I just want to make sure to stay true to honoring that. Again, thank you for joining me here today for all the follows on social media, Facebook, Instagram, all the above. I appreciate it. Thanks for keeping up. But today on the T, we are talking about education inequality. It is a topic that stood out to me a couple of different times in a couple of different conversations, and I figured why not bring it to you guys here on the team. Um, Giving you guys a few minutes to join in with me, but I also had to play some note Jenga. So I got a bunch of papers stuck into my notebook today. Just had to reorganize, so to speak, when I was doing notes for this topic. And yeah, it's a little bit of a mess, but it's okay. I get it. um, I also am following us on Facebook, so I'm looking out for your comments, making sure to comment back. I love the interactions, and making sure to keep you guys in the conversation. So we're gonna start off with a few opening hot topics, a few things that stood out to me this week. One major one being, which just kind of blew my mind because it was not funny, but it was very strange. I didn't think that people still did this kind of thing. But Lady Gaga's dog got like dog mad. And the most crazy thing about this story is that they got stolen her two pit bulls. I mean, no, two bulldogs, two French bulldogs got kidnapped from the dog walker, and they killed the dog walker. Can you believe that craziness? That's so sad. Like what? And then she's offering actually at NBC said she's offering $500,000 for whoever finds her two dogs or returns her two dogs. No questions. That I have a few questions. What? That's insane. People are still dog napping. That's like a bad movie. I'm so sorry for that, Lady Gaga, and my condolences to the family who of the dog walker. Insane. Um, then another thing we talked about a little bit on one of our recent episodes. I was talking about how we're planning on landing on Mars soon. NASA was talking about that. And there has been a spacecraft that landed on Mars. If you want to see the video, there's a short video that I watched on National Geographic. Any of their social media sites will probably have it. National Geographic. It was pretty interesting. I mean, I'm waiting to see the narrative here and see what happens, what comes of this whole Mars landing thing. But yeah, it was a good video to watch. um, one another thing, Biden had talked about. I believe I saw this morning. Was on NBC. Again, he was when he was campaigning. He had said he wanted to reach a certain number of vaccines for in a certain amount of time, and he had reached that. I believe it was 50 million in 50 or 500 days or something along those lines. But he's already reached that line. The vaccines are continuing to go out, and there are some stories back and forth about the effectiveness of it. That Pfizer may be more effective, less effective. The two vaccines that are out there that are currently being given out. I'm going to say do your due diligence and Google it. I do hear a lot of what's the word I'm searching for here? A lot of different points from that, like two completely different points on that, depending on which news outlet you're reading it from. So I would say do your due diligence on that. I'm still a little hesitant about getting the vaccine myself, but make sure you're wearing a mask, 6 feet. There are new strains that are being detected, of course, as well, and that blows my mind. There was one recently that I just heard yesterday saying that there is a new strand out of New York, possibly, that was created in New York, not traveling from somewhere else like I thought, like all the other strands, not like the California strand. It's its own creation in New York. So New York, calm down, stay in your house, do something. I don't know. Y'all created a whole nother strand. It's irking me at this point. Come on. and I'm sure everyone else, could have something to do with how we have lifted restrictions a little bit earlier than we probably should have. But you know what? That's just my opinion in that matter. Lastly, something that stood out to me and that's relating to our topic today was the Providence state-run schools are seeking $5 million, a $5 million boost for the education department. Is it needed? Perhaps. But what was said by the school district was it's not a question, it's an obligation based off of the funding that they say they need. And it's crazy to believe that they need $5 million to boot just as a boost uh, to the education department as a whole. However, I do believe it's something they probably need. With that being said, going into today's topic about education inequality is that's one part of it. Is the financial part, and as you know, financial struggles affect different people different ways. But it seems that globally we have a huge issue with the equality and the standard of education in this country and around the world. Um, Education inequality, more than anything else, if you ask me, is the fundamental root of broader inequality as well. And Malcolm X said, education is the passport to the future. But what if your passport that you're given is much less valid than the next person? That's my question to Malcolm X's statement. And as you all know, we admire Malcolm X, and I admire Malcolm X, and I think that he was one of our revolutionaries. But what if that passport you've given is less valid than others? I've advocated for many times for education in the U.S. and globally has been a major rise in this issue. Not just the standards of education, but the prevalence of inequality within the education has become more of a concern. The education system is systematically broke and it needs an overhaul now. Like many of our policies and many of our systems that we have put in place, it is systematically broken. And that leaves the 1.5 billion people that are students right now, and that's just counting in the US, um, stranded or leaves us with less of an advantage right from the start. Um, and I'm not going to get into that too much right now, but on a small scale, education inequality starts locally. Like many other things, like politics that we've talked about here, like anything else, it starts locally. It starts on a small scale. Um, it starts at home. It starts locally. And with that, you know, a few stats that I found with around the world that proves that it starts locally, globally. Um, 4 out of 100 Africans are expected to graduate or to move on to higher education, which is devastatingly low. It shocked me to see that. 14 out of 100 Asian Americans are or Asians are more likely to move on to higher education or graduate, and 36 out of 100 Latin Americans or Latinx, whatever, what have you, are looked at as probably graduating or moving on to higher education. Um, the numbers are again higher for the next two, but it's still shockingly low. Um, and that surprised me. That stood out to me, and it speaks to the prevalence of the inequality in education. The achievement gap is one thing that leads to this inequality as well, because we hold our achievements or standards differently than what the government or what a school might call an achievement. For me, the issue with the achievement gap is broadening our spectrum and broadening our term on what education means. You can be educated without having a degree. You can be educated in different things that aren't taught in school. You can be educated in something that is taught in school, but not having gone to school. If we just learn to broaden the scope of what education is determined as, then perhaps we could have more educated people, just and closing that achievement gap. And then, like I spoke about a few minutes ago, we also have the resource gap, which plays a major role into the education gap. Because if you don't have the resources to become educated, if you don't have the connection to the information, then you will not have it. It's just that simple. And then again, those things, the achievement gap and the resource gap, affect different minority groups and different people differently. But globally is a major issue. And then it forces and heightens the education gap. If you don't have that information, you don't know that information, you can't pass on that information. And there is even instances where things are being taught in different schooling than not. And for me, that's a bizarre concept, but I've seen it play out in my lifetime. Different schools and different districts teaching different things or more of things that should be taught and others less of. For what reason, I'm not sure. And I'm sure dated books and uh, dated science, math, writing books, along those lines have something to do with it. But if you're a teacher and you actually want to talk about that, let me know because it is, you are a victim of the resources if you are a teacher. And if you're not giving those resources to succeed, just like the kids, you won't. And I find that to be a very interesting aspect on the matter. Um, Another statistic that stood out to me was UK with the UK, US, and Germany are the highest ranking, one of the richest countries when we're ranking them in forms of monetary value. However, those three countries, the UK, US, and Germany, rank the poorest in education and education standards and education equality, which goes to say how much does money play a role in the education and in the education department and in society, because then we have to question, with that statistic telling us that the richest countries are actually the poorest in education, that deems that question for me. And to somewhat answer that, in my opinion, that inequality begins from a long, long time ago, again, affecting different minorities differently, from childhood. Um, and I'm gonna give you a little bit more on that. But what role does money play in that? Again, finances and health factors like COVID-19, which has been proven has affected minorities in a much larger way. So when we get into it, it is affecting the ability or the resource again for minorities to be able to get the education that they seek or that they need. Um, for me, it's a systematic problem. Again, it's an angry loop, so to speak, that's hard to break out of. Then we have inequalities within gender that tend to show at an early age. And depending on what you think of gender, according to this study, females tend to do better with reading and writing. And again, that's something that I think is based off of early development, which that's where most of the problem starts with the inequality as a whole, not even getting into the education part yet, because it begins to teach you the way you think in early development and the way you go about, and you learn the resources around you, and hopefully you learn the resources around you because some people aren't even that lucky, unfortunately. In a 2019 study, the Education Coalition uh, proved that child development is linked to future income as well. So again, when we're getting into it, you're realizing that these small factors build up and they create the issue that is education inequality. Um, the difference between schooling, but disadvantaged children fall behind in most public school settings by 8 months or more by the age of 11 years old. That is an unacceptable thing that shocks me. I can't believe that by the age of 11 years old, most kids, disadvantaged kids, as it was called in the study, have already fallen behind 8 months of material, or just not learned it because there are no proper avenues for directly teaching that child who may be struggling with that material as opposed to his classmates. Um, Again, in my opinion. So where do we step in with that? And does the difference in schooling matter? I hear the argument public school versus private school very often. And for me, growing up in a public school, I thought that I received a pretty fair education. But there are private schools that were also in my neighborhood growing up that taught things again that we didn't teach in my school or taught them sooner or taught more in depth. And that always ticked me the wrong way. Does money play that much a role in my education or my family's education that you will withhold information that maybe benefit to my future because I haven't paid you as much as the next person? For me, that seems broken. And then when you get into higher education, what even is the future of higher education? It deems the question for me. But then you get into higher education, and then you have the pressure to go to Ivy League schools, and it is less it's more appreciated than a community college, for instance, where someone can get the same degree in the same topic for a lot less money, but it is seen by employers or by future employers or even some people who are watching this, it's seen as less than. And I never understood that concept either. Remember, I am watching, guys. I am looking for your comments, of course. I see what's happening. So if you want to jump in, jump on in. But again, it I don't understand how the difference in schooling can be justified by a monetary value. That for me is sickening, absolutely sickening. What monetary value can you put on the future? Again, like Malcolm X said, education is the passport to the future. And if we're not armed with the tools to succeed, how can we ever? And then affecting different minority groups differently, but it's not being treated differently is the problem. It should be looked at differently. It should be treated differently. It should be monitored and acknowledged in the schooling department and in education in general around the world. Again, that stat about only 4 in 100 African children are expected to graduate, to even graduate, is devastating. Um, the future of higher education, again, is something that I am unsure of what looms in the balance. We have, like I said earlier, 1.5 billion students who are displaced right now because of COVID-19, because of the global pandemic. And school was not prepared for that. They were not in any way set up to have students only doing virtual. And the rise and the use of virtual overnight basically was 1,000% or something along those lines of students who use the online facilities because they were unknown and they were unused. So they are not prepared to hold this capacity of students, and a lot of people are falling behind and not getting the education that they even are paying for. So what are we paying for as a student right now? What is the future right now? We are speaking about that locally here in New England with a lot of different local politicians, but I encourage a lot of people to pose that question to local politicians. Where are we going with our education and our higher education? Because I'm not a parent, but I would definitely want to know. Are we acknowledging that? Are we acknowledging the differences in learning, the difference in the way that minorities are affected as opposed to the next person? And these are the things that we should pose to our local electives, because again, it starts locally. These are the things that will begin to unveil the inequality as a whole, as a broad spectrum. And then we can use that education to be armed for what may come our way. Just like the next, just like we were talking about in the Negro experience, the things that we learn are the things that we can use as a weapon. The things that we know are what make us the people that we are. So let's continue to learn. And I'm learning myself. I am to appreciate learning and education and knowledge over entertainment. That's something that a major goal that I think we should reach for as a people, to not always feel that you need to entertain yourself, or you not always need to be watching a movie or playing a game or on your phone, things like that. But, every day I challenge you to find something and learn something new about a topic that you knew nothing about before. That is what ignited you know, that acknowledgement and that recognition for me, and that appreciation, that newfound appreciation for learning. Um, and let me know. I want to see some updates. But with that being said, I am going to leave that there for you guys just a little bit early today. We are going to be back here with some more tea to spill. Keep up with me on Facebook and Instagram and all the above. We're gonna be right back here on Monday with some more fun stuff to talk about, and maybe some really important things too. I got a few things in the bag. Looking forward to it. Make sure you're checking out the Progress channel and all the projects we're working on as well. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you soon.